Caleb Rourke had always believed he knew what danger looked like. After 15 years in the field, he had seen worlds that burned with acid rains, watched starships crumble in orbit, and felt the cold claw of empty space closing in on him more times than he could count. Yet as he sat in the shuttle watching the jagged mountains of Zerath Prime spread beneath him like the broken spine of a long-dead giant, he felt a chill he couldn't shake. This mission was different. The brief from command had been short, almost curt. "Survival mission, you and your partner. No one has returned alive from this sector. Probability of success, low. Your partner is non-human." He wondered if that meant she. He assumed it was a female entity, would save him, or if she was more like a guard, keeping him alive until the planet decided otherwise. When the shuttle doors opened, a gust of frigid wind slammed into him. Zerath Prime's atmosphere was thick with dust and chemicals, giving the sky a permanent orange tint. He stepped down carefully, feeling the grit beneath his boots. There was no sound except for the wind and the distant rumble of shifting rock. It was quiet enough to unsettle him. "Caleb Rourke," said a voice, precise and without inflection. He turned sharply. She was standing there, not tall exactly, but with a presence that made the air feel heavier. Her skin shimmered faintly like polished metal in low light, and her eyes were dark, reflective, and almost impossible to read. Her movements were smooth, deliberate, and completely devoid of any human hesitation. "I am Asha," she said. "I am your assigned partner. All data indicates your survival chances without me are negligible." And negligible means. And I am programmed to prioritize mission success over human sentiment. Rocks shifted slightly under unseen forces, dust swirled around in patterns too deliberate to be natural, and every few meters he felt vibrations, like the ground itself was testing him. "This planet is not passive," Caleb said, glancing at Asha. "Looks like it wants to make sure we don't walk away." Environmental hazards are adaptive. Previous human teams were terminated due to predictable responses. "I always wanted to be in a statistic." The terrain grew worse. Sharp obsidian ridges, shallow pools of acid, and hidden sinkholes that seemed to appear and disappear in moments. Caleb kept close to Asha, sometimes instinctively stepping into danger zones just to test her reactions. Each time, she pulled him back with minimal effort and zero explanation beyond probability calculations and survival metrics. "You act without data," she said at one point, as he tried to jump over a fissure. "Your behavior reduces calculated survival probability by 4.3%. But unpredictable variables increase risk. Humans have historically survived due to creative problem-solving in extreme circumstances. You may possess such abilities, though they are statistically unlikely to succeed without guidance." Caleb felt the familiar tension creeping into his shoulders, the kind that told him his body was bracing for danger even when danger had yet to appear. He had survived worse than this, he reminded himself, but there was something about the planet that felt alive, aware, and patient. They came to a wide canyon stretching for miles, walls lined with jagged rock formations that twisted upward like the spines of some enormous beast. Caleb studied the path ahead. "Looks like we'll have to go down," he said. "Negative," Asha replied. "Descending will trigger gravitational instability zones. Alternative route calculated, southeast around ridge. Estimated increase in travel time, 37 minutes. Estimated increase in survival probability, 12.5%. Cooperation maximizes the probability of survival. Emotional constructs are irrelevant." He looked at Asha, whose form had shifted slightly, faster than human movement could account for. She had already moved to a safer spot, her gaze scanning the canyon as if it could see patterns invisible to him. "This is adaptive terrain," she explained. "Caution is required." The planet itself was actively responding to their presence. Every step felt like the ground was deciding if they deserved to live. As night fell, they set up a temporary shelter. Caleb was exhausted, muscles aching in ways that reminded him he was very much human. Asha, meanwhile, seemed unaffected by fatigue. She scanned the area, deployed environmental sensors, and calculated optimal rest cycles for him. "You sleep in cycles of 90 minutes. That maximizes recovery and reduces exposure," she said. "Deviation reduces survival probability by 6%. Sleep didn't come easy. Every sound, the cracking of distant rocks, the hum of shifting terrain, the whisper of wind over metallic surfaces, kept him alert. Yet he also noticed something remarkable. Despite her lack of sleep, her presence was calming. The rhythm of her movements, her constant calculations, made him feel, for the first time since leaving the shuttle, that survival was possible. Morning came with a golden hue, sharp and unforgiving. Caleb stood, stretching, watching Asha analyze the horizon. "You know," he said, "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad you're here." But the way she moved to stand beside him, scanning the terrain with him rather than for him, hinted at a change, a subtle acknowledgement that humans were not entirely predictable even to her. They pressed forward. The first day was just survival, avoiding hazards, navigating terrain, and testing the limits of human endurance against alien calculation. But Caleb felt something stir inside him, a strange, exhilarating hope. Maybe, just maybe, the stories of failure didn't apply to him. Maybe the unpredictability of a human mind, coupled with the precision of a non-human partner, could bend fate itself. As they climbed a ridge to overlook a vast, jagged valley, Caleb allowed himself a brief smile. The planet still felt alive, still hungry, but he felt sharper, faster, and more aware than he had in years. He turned to Asha. "Tomorrow," he said, "we start making our own rules." The first night on Zerath Prime had been restless. Caleb had counted every small sound, the shifting of rocks, the hum of the wind, the distant echoes that might have been anything. Sleep had come in fragments, and each time he woke, he saw Asha already standing, scanning the horizon with the precision of a machine built for survival. There was no fatigue in her movements, no hesitation, no fear. Morning came sharp and bright. The sun, or whatever light source dominated the sky here, was harsh, casting long shadows that made the jagged terrain appear even more menacing. Caleb stretched, muscles stiff from the climb up the ridge, and tried to ignore the growing tension in his chest. Every step here required calculation, observation, and a careful balance between caution and instinct. Asha had already mapped out the day's route. "We will traverse the valley below. Terrain analysis indicates minimal gravitational instability along the path, though energy expenditures will be significant," she said. Her voice was flat, precise, and unwavering. Caleb squinted at the valley. The rocks looked sharp enough to tear through reinforced boots, and thin plumes of what looked like smoke curled from deep fissures in the ground. "Minimal?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "You've got a strange definition of safe." "Human unpredictability can increase risk by up to 7% if caution is not maintained." Caleb kept moving, muscles coiled and ready for anything, while Asha moved alongside him, adjusting her stride to match his speed and occasionally extending her sensors to detect hidden hazards. Hours passed, and the valley grew more dangerous. Sharp obsidian spikes jutted out from the ground, and shallow pools of green liquid reflected the harsh sunlight, their surfaces rippling with strange currents. Caleb stepped carefully, testing the stability of each step before committing his weight. "This place, it's like it's watching us," he muttered. "Observation is likely," Asha replied. This ecosystem was designed to identify and eliminate threats efficiently. Patterns suggest that previous intrusions triggered defensive responses. Survival rates are extremely low without a non-human partner. Humans have survived where data predicted failure. You may possess creative problem-solving abilities that can adapt to environmental variables. She simply continued moving, her sensors sweeping the terrain with a precision Caleb envied. He realized he was learning from her movements without even trying. The way she scanned, calculated, and predicted hazards gave him insight into how to navigate this deadly landscape. Suddenly, the ground shifted beneath him. Caleb stumbled, barely catching himself as a fissure opened up where he had intended to step. Rocks tumbled into the depths below, and a plume of dust rose around him. He looked up at Asha, who had already moved to solid ground, scanning the fissure. "Adaptive terrain," she said simply. "The planet reacts to mass displacement. Predictive movement is recommended." Humans had survived worse conditions, deserts, frozen wastelands, deep space voids, and he intended to add Zerath Prime to that list. They reached a narrow canyon in the valley's center. The walls were jagged and close, making navigation difficult. Caleb tested each foothold carefully, feeling the sharp edges bite into his boots. Asha moved ahead, scanning every inch of the path and occasionally signaling him to wait or shift direction. "Watch your left," she said, pointing to a section of wall that looked solid but had begun to crack under the weight of previous erosion. Caleb adjusted his step just in time, avoiding a sharp spike of rock that could have ended the day disastrously. He exhaled, trying to steady his racing heart. Okay, this planet is definitely trying to kill us. I still think it wants to eat me. By midday, they reached a plateau overlooking a strange formation. Hundreds of metallic spikes jutted out from the ground like the ribs of some ancient beast, their surfaces polished and reflective. Caleb's eyes widened. "What is this?" he asked. "Unknown," Asha replied, her sensors scanning the formation. "Data suggests it is not natural. Likely a remnant of an extinct civilization or a defensive mechanism. Approach with caution. No immediate threat detected, but caution is advised." Even Asha, with all her calculations and predictive models, could not account for the human mind's capacity to improvise. Suddenly, a tremor ran through the ground, stronger than anything before. Caleb stumbled, gripping a spike for support. A low rumble echoed through the valley, and he realized the formation was shifting. Panels of metal slid open, revealing strange mechanisms inside. Caleb stared in awe. "What is that?" he whispered. "A defensive system," Asha said calmly. "Activation detected. Probability of failure if we engage, 64.3%. Probability of survival if we retreat, 82%. Engaging could mean certain death, but it also meant a chance to understand the planet's secrets. He looked at Asha. "What do you think?" The mechanisms inside the spikes were unlike anything Caleb had seen, ancient, alien, and clearly dangerous. But as they studied them, he noticed patterns, sequences that could be manipulated. He explained his observations to Asha, who adjusted her calculations in real time. Together, human intuition and non-human precision began to override the planet's defenses. Hours passed. Caleb's hands were cut and bruised from climbing and manipulating the metal spikes, but they made progress. The mechanisms responded to their actions, doors opening, panels shifting, pathways forming. Caleb felt a surge of pride and excitement. Humans survived not just because they were strong or fast, but because they could think, adapt, and solve problems in ways no machine could anticipate. Finally, as the sun dipped low on the horizon, they completed the sequence. The formation settled, silent once more, and a hidden passageway opened at its base. Caleb looked at Asha, breathing heavily. "We did it," he said, disbelief and triumph mixing in his voice. "Probability of survival increased by 12%, she said calmly, though her sensors showed a slight fluctuation in readings that Caleb could only interpret as acknowledgement. They entered the passageway, moving into the unknown, each step a reminder that Zerath Prime was dangerous, unpredictable, and alive. Yet Caleb felt a growing confidence. Humans had survived countless impossible situations before, and with Asha by his side, they might just survive this one too. As night fell, the light of Zerath Prime casting strange shadows through the passage, Caleb realized something profound. This mission was not just about survival. It was about proving that humans, with all their unpredictability, intuition, and determination, could thrive where even the most calculated machines faltered. And he was ready to prove it. The hidden passage was narrower than Caleb expected, the walls smooth and metallic, like they had been shaped by hands far larger than any human. The air inside was cooler, but there was a subtle vibration underfoot, almost like the planet itself was thrumming in rhythm with some unseen heartbeat. Caleb took a deep breath and adjusted his pack. He didn't like enclosed spaces, especially ones that moved when they weren't supposed to, but there was no turning back. Asha moved ahead with her usual precision, sensors sweeping the area. The passage is stable, though structural integrity is unknown beyond 120 meters. Probability of collapse if speed exceeds 1.2 meters per second, 43%, she said. Caleb nodded. "I'll keep it slow. I don't feel like being crushed today." Some looked like symbols, others like maps of the planet, but distorted. He ran a hand along the smooth metal, feeling the faint pulse beneath his fingertips. "Do you know what these are?" he asked. "Unknown," Asha replied. "Possibly remnants of the creators of the planet. Their technology is indistinguishable from biology in its complexity." "You mean this whole planet, it's alive?" "I'm teaching the planet." He paused, feeling a moment of unease. "Do you ever think the planet wants us to go somewhere specific?" "So we're heading to the heart of it. Wonderful." Yet as alien as it was, it also reminded him of human structures, familiar in the way patterns repeated. There was artistry here, purpose, and design beyond mere survival. Suddenly, the passage opened into a massive chamber. Caleb froze, awestruck. The room was enormous, with a ceiling far above them that seemed to stretch into darkness. Strange machines filled the space, towers of metal and glass, panels flashing with faint light, and strange tubes that pulsed with energy. In the center was a platform hovering slightly above the ground, surrounded by a low mist. Caleb stepped forward cautiously. Okay, this is big, really big. Function unknown. Environmental feedback suggests centralization of adaptive systems. Probability of discovery by other life forms, minimal. The adaptive environment responds to detected intrusions. Centralized control allows optimization of threat response. Sounds like my kind of problem. Even with Ashaz's guidance, he had no idea what they were seeing. This is alive, he whispered. Not the planet itself, but its thinking. He realized what that meant. This planet had expected humans to fail. The calculations had been absolute, yet here he was, standing alive with a non-human partner beside him. Humans were always the unknown, the unpredictable variable, and now the planet itself was learning about them in real time. A series of lights flashed across the platform suddenly, and a low, resonant hum filled the chamber. Caleb and Ashab both froze. From the shadows emerged shapes, massive constructs of metal and crystal, moving with surprising fluidity. They were guardians built to respond to threats, but not entirely rigid. Each step they took caused vibrations, and the hum of the chamber grew louder, almost like a heartbeat. Defensive units, Ashab said calmly. Engagement will reduce survival probability to 46%. Evading or hiding increases probability to 67%. Fighting was, well, he wasn't sure how he could fight something like this. But he knew one thing: humans survived against impossible odds because they adapted, because they observed, improvised, and refused to accept defeat. All right, he muttered. We improvise. Calculating optimal response. Caleb felt alive, more alert than ever before. His heart pounded, muscles coiled, mind racing. Every move mattered. Every decision could mean survival or failure. He realized he was not just relying on instinct, but also on experience, observation, and creativity, traits no algorithm could fully predict. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. Caleb and Ashab maneuvered through the chamber, using the platform's structure to their advantage. He noticed a series of control nodes along the edge, panels that looked interactive, likely connected to the chamber's systems. Those nodes, he whispered. We can use them. Then let's beat the odds. The constructs began to falter, their movements slower, less precise. The chamber's systems responded to their actions, opening pathways and creating barriers that gave Caleb and Ashab an advantage. The probability calculations that had predicted certain failure were now being rewritten. Finally, Caleb reached the last node. He slammed his hand down. A surge of energy pulsed through the platform, and the constructs froze, then powered down entirely. The hum of the chamber shifted, no longer menacing but calm, almost welcoming. Caleb fell to his knees, exhausted but exhilarated. He looked at Ashab, who stood still, sensors glowing faintly. We did it, he said, voice shaking. Probability of survival increased by 27%, she said calmly. Yet there was something different in her analysis, a subtle recognition that human unpredictability, intuition, and creativity had changed the outcome. Caleb smiled, leaning against a panel. You know, I think I like working with humans after all. Observation required. Together, they had not just survived. They had thrived, adapted, and reshaped the planet's calculations. Humanity's unpredictability, intuition, and determination were more powerful than any algorithm could predict. And as he lay back, listening to the gentle hum of the chamber, Caleb knew that this was only the beginning. Zerath Prime was vast, alive, and full of challenges, but with Ashab by his side, and with the power of human ingenuity, they might just conquer it all. The chamber had fallen silent. The massive constructs lay dormant, their movements halted, and the hum of the platform shifted into a steady, calming pulse. Caleb and Ashab had achieved something extraordinary. They had outmaneuvered a system designed to kill, yet there was no time to celebrate. Zerath Prime had only revealed a part of itself, and Caleb could feel that the planet's true challenge still lay ahead. We've gained access, Ashab said, scanning the chamber's panels. Central systems are partially compromised, but full control requires interaction with external nodes located throughout the planetary surface. Time-sensitive intervention recommended. But they had a new advantage now, the knowledge of the planet's behavior and the ability to manipulate its systems. We go prepared, he said, tightening his gear. We use what we've learned here to stay ahead of whatever it throws at us next. Optimal strategy involves combined human adaptability and non-human computational efficiency. The terrain below seemed restless, almost breathing, as if it were aware of their presence and adjusting in response. The planet adapts to perceived threats, Asha reminded him. Terrain instability, energy discharges, and defensive constructs will respond to intrusion. Probability of failure increases with reckless movement. Smart and fast, maybe, but reckless, never. Her guidance was precise, allowing him to navigate the treacherous ground without incident. This planet doesn't just punish failure, Caleb muttered. It teaches you, makes you earn every step. The sun, or whatever light source dominated Zerath Prime, cast harsh shadows across the valley, highlighting every uneven rock and hidden fissure. Caleb's muscles ached, but he pressed on, focusing on the rhythm of their movement and the subtle cues in the terrain. He noticed how Asha adjusted her calculations, predicting hazards and guiding him in real time. Yet there were moments when her calculations failed to account for the unexpected. A loose rock, a sudden gust of wind, and Caleb's instincts saved them both. By mid-afternoon, they reached a massive spire, its surface smooth and metallic, reflecting the strange light in patterns that made Caleb dizzy. Embedded along its surface were nodes similar to those in the chamber below. "This must be one of the external nodes," Caleb said, stepping closer. "Control points for the planetary systems, I bet." They were spaced along the spire's surface, requiring careful climbing, precise timing, and constant adjustments. His heart pounded as he began the ascent, testing each foothold, feeling for vibrations in the metal, and listening to the faint hums that ran beneath his boots. Asha moved beside him, analyzing the environment and projecting guidance. Left hand to the second ridge. Right foot to the protrusion above. Energy discharge patterns indicate safe intervals of 1.7 seconds. The constructs that had previously defended the planet's central chamber stirred at the base of the spire, but Caleb and Asha were already too high to be reached. Halfway up, a tremor shook the spire. Caleb gritted his teeth, gripping the nodes tightly. A panel beneath him shifted, revealing a hidden mechanism that tried to throw him off balance. He reacted instinctively, leaping sideways and catching a narrow ledge just in time. "Your unpredictability is compensating for system anomalies," Asha observed. Probability of success increased by 7%. Caleb touched the final node, and a pulse of energy surged through the planetary surface. The valley below quaked as fissures realigned, reflective liquids shifted, and the ground stabilized in new patterns. The constructs paused, seemingly confused by the sudden changes. "The planetary system is responding," Asha said. "Synchronization has begun, though full completion requires interaction with remaining nodes located in 3 additional sectors." As evening approached, they reached a vast plateau with 3 more nodes scattered across jagged hills and rocky ridges. The terrain was more treacherous than before, and Caleb realized that each step could be their last if he miscalculated. Asha scanned the plateau. Optimal approach involves sequential activation. Probability of fatal error, 33% if human misjudgment occurs. Probability of success, 71% if collaboration is maintained. He felt the thrill of survival, the raw, undeniable feeling of human ingenuity and determination overcoming impossible odds. Asha's guidance was precise. Step left, wait 0.8 seconds, shift weight forward, node in reach. He exhaled and moved toward the second node, which required climbing a steep ridge with loose stones that threatened to crumble under his weight. "Use lateral leverage," Asha instructed. "Momentum must be controlled. Avoid abrupt force application." A loose rock slid beneath his foot, but he reacted instinctively, shifting his weight and catching himself just in time. The node glowed, and another pulse surged through the plateau. "2 nodes complete," Caleb said, panting. "Only 1 left." The wind howled across the plateau, threatening to throw him off balance. Caleb's stomach tightened, but he focused on the rhythm of his breathing and the instructions from Asha. "Move with controlled force," she said. "Timing of energy pulses critical. Step onto the ledge now." Energy surged across the plateau, and the planetary surface shifted once again. The constructs below froze entirely, no longer moving, as if recognizing the humans' dominance over the adaptive systems. "We did it," Caleb whispered, exhausted but exhilarated. "All nodes activated." Assessment: human ingenuity and adaptability exceeded predictive models. He realized the truth. Humans survived not because they were strongest or fastest, but because they were adaptable, creative, and willing to take calculated risks that no machine could predict. For the first time since arriving, Caleb felt a sense of triumph, not just for himself, but for humanity. The planet that had been designed to kill them was now, in a sense, tamed, reshaped by human and non-human collaboration. Asha moved beside him. Observation. Human partnership is a valuable variable. Integration with non-human systems enhances survival outcomes. Humans always find a way. Caleb looked at Asha, sensing a subtle shift in her sensors, recognition perhaps of the unpredictable power of the human mind. "You know," he said quietly, "I think we make a pretty good team. Beyond prediction, that's humanity. And with partners like Asha, no challenge, no planet, and no machine could stand in their way. The night on Zerath Prime was quiet. The planet's adaptive systems hummed gently, synchronized under the influence of Caleb and Asha. Gone were the unpredictable tremors, the deadly fissures, and the restless constructs. In their place, a calm energy flowed across the surface, as though the planet itself had acknowledged their presence and, in a way, their victory. Caleb sat on a ridge overlooking the valley below, muscles sore but mind alert. He felt a sense of awe at what they had achieved. He had survived environments that most humans couldn't imagine, but this was something entirely different. A planet that had been calculated to kill, now tamed not by brute force or technology alone, but by human intuition, creativity, and adaptability. Asha stood beside him, sensors faintly glowing in the dim light. She had been silent for a long while, analyzing data streams, scanning the horizon, and recalculating probabilities. Caleb studied her closely. She had been built to be precise, emotionless, and efficient, yet in the last several days, he had noticed subtle changes. She no longer responded solely with metrics. There was observation, acknowledgement, even a trace of a respect, perhaps, for human ingenuity. "You realize," Caleb said finally, breaking the silence, "that what we did here isn't just survival, right? Basically, the galaxy didn't expect us to do this, and we just proved them wrong." The logs hinted at attempts to observe, measure, and even contain species that were considered dangerous. And humans, they weren't expected to survive, not even remotely. "That's why the planet reacted the way it did," Caleb said, voice quiet. "It wasn't just a trap, it was a test, and we passed." Adaptation, improvisation, and risk assessment exceed prior calculations. Recalculation of threat models required. Pools of reflective liquid shimmered differently, the wind no longer threatened, and the jagged rocks seemed stabilized. The planet was alive, yes, but it had learned from them, adapted to their unpredictability, and in some sense acknowledged it. "This place is like nothing I've ever seen," Caleb said, brushing dirt from his jacket. "Every step felt impossible, but somehow we managed. Not because we're perfect, but because we're human." Finally, someone gets it. It was a partnership that defied the odds, one that showed the raw power of human ingenuity when coupled with advanced technology. As night deepened, Caleb finally allowed himself to relax. The valley below glimmered faintly in the strange light, and he could see patterns forming across the landscape, paths, energy flows, and controlled constructs, all responding to the synchronization they had completed. Zerath Prime was no longer hostile. It was alive, yes, but in a way that respected their actions, their persistence, and their ingenuity. "You know," Caleb said, speaking more to himself than to Asha, "most humans wouldn't have made it this far. They'd have panicked or fallen for every trap. But we didn't. We survived because we adapted. We survived because we refused to accept the impossible." Observation, human resilience and creativity redefine survival parameters. Probability models require updating across multiple sectors. Zerath Prime had been considered deadly, unsolvable, and unconquerable. And yet here they were. Humans had done what others could not. "It's funny," Caleb said quietly. "They always talk about humans as unpredictable, even dangerous, but really we're just adaptable. That's our edge. That's why we survive." Then after a pause, she said, "Assessment. Human ingenuity is a benchmark for survival. Collaboration with non-human entities enhances efficiency. Observation complete. Recommendation. Humans represent a unique and valuable species." Not bad for a couple of days' work. Together they stood at the edge of a new understanding. Zerath Prime was no longer a threat. It was a record of human capability, a monument to unpredictability, and a reminder that no system, no matter how calculated, could fully account for humans. Hours passed as they observed the synchronized valley, watching constructs move in controlled patterns and energy flows stabilize. Caleb felt a surge of pride, not just for himself but for humanity. The galaxy had underestimated them, counted them as likely to fail, and yet here they were, alive, dominant, and proving that unpredictability, creativity, and determination could outmaneuver even the most advanced systems. Finally, Caleb stood, stretching his aching muscles. "We've done it," he said softly. "The planet's defenses neutralized, all threats accounted for, and we survived. You know, I think we've changed something here. Not just the planet, but how the galaxy will see humans from now on. Finally, you admit it. Humans matter, humans can win, and sometimes, humans surprise even the smartest machines." He thought about how far he and Asha had come, about the dangers they had faced, and the unpredictable choices that had kept them alive. "Tomorrow," he said quietly, "we leave this place, but we'll take something with us. Proof that humans can survive anything, even worlds that were designed to kill. Memory of actions preserved. Probability of future recognition by external species increased." Caleb allowed himself a final glance at the synchronized valley, feeling pride, awe, and a sense of accomplishment he could not describe fully. Zerath Prime had been a challenge unlike any other, but together, human and non-human, they had not only survived, they had dominated, adapted, and reshaped the odds. As Caleb drifted toward sleep, he realized a truth that had been quietly growing in his mind. Survival was more than instinct or calculation. It was creativity, it was determination, and it was the willingness to face the impossible with intelligence and courage. That was humanity's edge. That was what made them remarkable. And in the vast expanse of the galaxy, filled with challenges that no species could fully predict, that edge would make all the difference. He closed his eyes, the hum of the planet now a comforting rhythm, and knew one thing for certain. Zerath Prime had tested them, but humans had passed. Not because they were stronger, faster, or smarter in the traditional sense, but because they were humans, unpredictable, adaptable, and unstoppable. And that was enough.